voted against it. I was a Labour MP at the time. And there was a full 3-line whip and full-scale bullying to dragoon Labour MPs into voting for the introduction of tuition fees. And they justified it by saying these tuition fees were token. They would only be £1,000 per year. I argued inside the Labour Party and in the Parliament, in defiance of the Labour leadership, that once you breached the principle that higher education should be free, paid for from general taxation, because it was an investment by the nation in the youngster involved. It wasn't a personal benefit for the youngster whose parents should pay it. It was the country that needed a new generation of trained and educated youngsters. Once you breached that principle, then the issue of how much it was became merely a matter of arithmetic. And I remember vividly predicting that it's 1,000 now, I said, then it'll be 5,000, then it'll be 10,000, and they all laughed. It's recorded. The House laughed when I predicted that tuition fees would reach 10,000. But they're already, in September of this year, going to be 9,000. And I think no one would believe that these tuition fees are going to stop rising. Now, for people on 3, 4, or in the case of medical students, 7-year degrees, these sums are astronomical, placing university education out with the reach of ordinary people, even many middle-class people, never mind working-class people. I say that education should be paid for from the kindergarten to the university by the state, and the state should raise the money in order to pay for it, because it's in the state's interest to have this educated and trained generation. And if you ask me how will the state find this money, I'll give you 3 quick ways. First of all, we could stop invading other people's countries and setting fire to them, and we'd save thereby hundreds of billions of pounds that we have wasted burning people in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and in the other wars that Mr. Blair took us into, and Mr. Cameron and Mr. Clegg are keeping us in. We would save a lot of money by stopping going to war. Secondly, we could scrap the nuclear missile fleet that we're about to replace at the cost of £80 billion for nuclear weapons that we can't use. There's no one that we can use them against without committing national suicide. They're just a prestige, a sort of macho accoutrement for the state, which we simply can't afford. And thirdly, and perhaps most significantly, the richest people in this country, some of whom are probably dining with the Prime Minister this evening, if this evening's news is anything to go by, the richest people in this country are avoiding or evading more than £100 billion worth of tax every year. These are not my figures. These are the figures of Vince Cable, the Liberal Democrat grandee and Minister for Business and Enterprise. Before the general election, he identified more than £100 billion a year in tax being avoided and even evaded by the richest people in the country. Put those 3 things together, we could build another 100 universities and send every kid that could go there entirely free. I never went to university myself. I left school at 16. I went to work in Michelin Tyres. I became the only politician in Parliament that could make a ZX radial. Most of them couldn't even change one. So I paid tax from the age of 16 so that Mr. Blair and others could go free to Oxford University and even get a grant to enjoy it with. And I was happy to do that. I never once complained about it, because if I, God forbid, fall down here tonight, I want a doctor who's well educated and well trained in order to look after me. If I hire an architect, if I hire a professional of any kind, if my children go to school, I want them to be taught by a competent, well-educated teacher. So it's an investment by the taxpayer, not a cost.
Okay, that brings me to my next question. You touched upon it a little bit. You want British military to come back as soon as possible from Afghanistan and other countries that they, as you said, they've been invaded. Now, in your Bradford West, there are 30 to 40% people of Pakistani origin, and it seems like that this war is spreading into Pakistan's border area. Yeah. What would you like to say about that?
Well, it's a real live issue in the by-election, because I said on BBC on Sunday that the soldiers of the Yorkshire Regiment, who were tragically repatriated as remains to this country just very recently. 5 of them under the age of 21 years of age, and 1 of them from the city of Bradford. I said that these soldiers had died in vain. Now, the definition of in vain is pointlessly. They died without a point to their death. And I've been attacked now by the Liberal Democrat candidate because all 3 of the main parties...
When you say in vain, they were not defending their country. They were not defending their motherland.
No, you see, if anyone threatened this country, I would die. I'd be ready to die on the first day in defense of the country. If I believed that our country's interests were vitally threatened, I would be, as old as I am, at the recruitment office trying to enlist. And that's what we should have an armed services for. But not for invading other people's countries, not for occupying other people's countries, when no good can possibly come of it. You know the region at least as well as me, and almost certainly better. Nobody ever successfully occupied Afghanistan. Not even Alexander the Great successfully occupied Afghanistan. And David Cameron isn't Alexander the Great. The idea that the Afghans can be subjugated is preposterous. The Afghans are the best fighters in the world. They're fighting in their own country, on their own land, for their own homeland and the defense of their own families and their way of life and their religion and so on. This is an unbeatable foe. This is what I mean by pointlessly and in vain. We had an interest, a legitimate interest, in ensuring that Afghanistan was not a base for the global terrorism of the Al-Qaeda variety. We had an interest in that. We were right to be insistent upon the fact that Afghanistan must be closed down as a base for Al-Qaeda type atrocities across the world. But we have no mandate for and no right to occupy Afghanistan, where, by the way, there aren't any Al-Qaeda left. They've gone every which way, into Pakistan, to Somalia, to Yemen, to Britain, to America, to everywhere in the world except Afghanistan. Yep. So we went there to fight Al-Qaeda, but Al-Qaeda's not there anymore. Who we're fighting now is the Afghans in their country. Now, if anyone invaded our country here in Great Britain, every self-respecting person would oppose the foreign occupation of this country, either covertly, implicitly, or openly, and out on the streets fighting them. And the Afghans are not less than us. They don't love their country less than we love ours. And all they're doing is resisting the foreign occupation of their country. And moreover, they cannot be beaten.
And above all, is interest of Britain that you're saying that is interest of us as well.
Well, we just
bring our forces back.
We can't afford the blood or the treasure that we are expending in Afghanistan. We have thousands of soldiers there. We've lost hundreds of them. We've lost thousands of soldiers to illness and injury, psychological and physical. I met a paratrooper on the street today suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, which he incurred whilst fighting in Afghanistan. The government has abandoned him. He has no job. He has no proper medical care. No one's looking after him. You see, we send these soldiers off to these wars and wave our flags as they go. But when they come back broken, or if they come back dead, these politicians, these hypocrites in the House of Commons, they solemnly read out their names and they tell us that we will never forget them. But I promise you this, if you ask these same politicians at the end of question time, just half an hour later, to recall the name of a single one of the young men that they had just been intoning and mourning, they wouldn't be able to do so. That's the truth.
Thank you very much, George. Now I would like to ask our control room to open lines for any question that our callers might have, and I would also ask people sitting in the audience if they have any questions. If you could please give me your name and ask your question. I think Rathod Sahab have a question.
My name is Iqbal Rathod. I would like to ask George Galloway the question, inshallah, if you've been elected,
we'll give you a mic. Just 1 second. We'll give you a mic. If you could start again with your introduction, please.
My name is Muhammad Iqbal Rathod from Bradford. Inshallah, George, if you've been elected on Thursday,
I'm sure that you will be elected.
Sure.
You have mentioned that your first priority for the Bradford West will be the Odeon. In my opinion, the first priority should be the young people and old people and disabled people.
Sure.
Because so far, nothing been done for disabled people. There was a center in Carlisle Business Center for disabled people. The Labour Party had abandoned that, and they are looking for a nice place.
You have a question, please?
Well, I mean, if the question is what my priority is, I mentioned the Odeon only in the sense that it's going to fall down apparently within days, or be pulled down apparently within days. So next week, if I'm elected as the MP, I'll have to find one of these sovereign wealth funds to express an interest to save it. So it's a priority, not because it's the most important issue, but because it's the most urgent one.